They told us the war was over. November 11th, 1918, 11 o'clock in the morning. The guns stopped. After months of that constant thunder, the silence was worse somehow. It pressed on your ears like water. I'm Private James McKenna, 2nd Infantry Division, American Expeditionary Forces. I was 20 years old when I enlisted in New York City, April 1917. My ma cried when I signed up, but my old man was proud, said I was doing my duty. They had parades for us. Girls threw flowers. We were going to make the world safe for democracy, they said. I believed it then. God help me, I believed every word. I shipped out in June of 17 with the boys from my neighborhood. We trained in France, learned to dig trenches, learned to keep our heads down. By the time we went into the line that October, I thought I knew what war was. I'd heard the stories from the British and French boys who'd been at it since 1914. I didn't know anything. I saw my first action in the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, September 1918. 47 days of hell. We pushed the Germans back, mile by bloody mile. Lost more men than I can count. My best friend, Danny Sullivan, took shrapnel in the chest on the 3rd day. Died in my arms, gurgling, drowning in his own blood. But we kept pushing. That's what you do. You stop thinking, stop feeling, and you just push forward through the mud and the corpses and the screaming. Then came November 11th, the armistice. The war to end all wars was over. They told us we'd won. They told us we could finally see what we'd been fighting over. 3 days after the armistice, our captain gave us permission to walk out into no man's land. Not all of us wanted to go. Some of the boys said they never wanted to see it again, that they'd spent months staring at it from the trenches, and that was enough. But I went. I had to see it in daylight, without the machine guns firing. I had to understand what we'd done all this for. There were about 15 of us that morning. Americans and a few French soldiers who'd survived the whole damn war. 4 years they'd been fighting. 4 years. I couldn't imagine it. My 9 months felt like a lifetime. We climbed out of our trench on the American side. No whistle this time. No orders to go over the top. Just men walking on ground that had been a death sentence a week before. The silence was unnatural. You could hear birds, actual birds, singing somewhere in the distance. When had they come back? The wind moved through the shattered tree stumps, making them creak. I could hear my own breathing, loud in my ears. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Even in November, even with the cold, the smell was indescribable. Death has a smell, you know. Sweet and rotten and chemical all at once. It gets in your clothes, your hair, your lungs. I can still smell it sometimes, 60 years later, when I close my eyes. We walked slowly, like men in a dream or a nightmare. The ground beneath our boots was churned up worse than any field back home. Shell craters everywhere, some of them big enough to swallow a house. They were filled with brown water, scummy and still. I didn't look too close at what was floating in them. Didn't want to know. The mud sucked at our boots with every step. Thick, gray mud that seemed to go down forever. This was the ground men had fought over, died over, killed over. For mud. One of the French soldiers, an old sergeant with dead eyes, he laughed. Just once, sharp and bitter. Voila, he said. This is what 4 years bought us. Nobody else said anything. What was there to say? We kept walking. The barbed wire was everywhere. Miles of it, tangled and twisted, rusted with rain and blood. Some of it was cut where we'd made our pushes, but most of it was still there, waiting. Coils of it, walls of it. In some places it was 6 feet high, 20 feet deep. There were uniforms caught in the wire, still, hanging there like scarecrows. Some of them had been there so long the bodies had rotted away, leaving just the cloth and the bones. German gray, French blue, British khaki, American olive drab. We were all equal in the wire. I saw one American soldier, his body still mostly intact because of the cold. He'd gotten tangled up trying to crawl through, and the machine guns had caught him. His hands were still reaching forward, frozen like that, reaching for the German trench that was maybe 50 yards away. 50 yards. He died 50 yards from his objective. I don't know his name. I don't know if anyone ever came for him. The shell craters were filled with things. Equipment, rifles, helmets, gas masks, letters from home that had spilled from pockets, the ink run together from rain, unreadable now. Photographs of girls and wives and children lying in the mud, faces staring up at nothing. And bodies. God, the bodies. They were everywhere, in the craters, in the mud, piled up in places where attacks had failed. Some were fresh from the last days of fighting. Others had been there for months, maybe years. You could tell the difference. The fresh ones still looked like people. The old ones, they didn't. Corporal Jenkins, walking next to me, he stepped on something that gave way under his boot, made a sound like rotten fruit bursting. He looked down, saw what it was, and vomited right there. Just fell to his knees and heaved until there was nothing left. I didn't look. I kept my eyes forward. We passed a crater where an entire squad had died together. You could see where they'd been caught by a shell, bodies thrown in every direction. One of them had been blown into a tree stump 15 feet away, just embedded there. The tree had grown around him almost, bark and bone fused together. A French lieutenant started praying, Hail Mary, full of grace, over and over. His voice was shaking. The ground was full of metal, shrapnel, shell casings, bullets, millions of bullets just lying there in the mud. Unexploded shells, too, sticking up like gray mushrooms. Dangerous still. The captain told us to watch our step, that men were still dying to the ordnance. Even in peace, no man's land was killing. We reached the halfway point between the trenches, the deepest part of no man's land. This was the ground that had been contested for years, the ground that had no owner. I turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. This was what we'd fought for. This was the prize. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We kept walking toward the German lines. Their trench looked like ours, but wrong somehow. Like looking at your own face in a distorted mirror. Same mud, same sandbags, same duckboards. Same misery, just from the other direction. The German dead were thicker here, near their wire. They'd made a stand in the last days, tried to hold the line. Hadn't worked. Never works in the end. Someone always breaks. Their equipment was scattered everywhere. Stick grenades with their wooden handles rotting. Pickelhaube helmets, that spiked design they'd stopped using years ago. Now just relics in the mud. Letters in German that I couldn't read. Photographs of German girls, German mothers, German children. The same photographs we carried. One of our boys, a kid named Peterson, he picked up a German helmet, turned it over in his hands. There was a bullet hole in the front, jagged, with rust-colored stains inside. He put it down real quick, like it had burned him. They were just like us, he said quietly. Weren't they? Nobody answered him, but yeah, they were just like us. We found a German dugout that hadn't collapsed. Corporal Martinez went down first, came back up white as a sheet. Said there were 6 of them down there. Looked like they'd been trapped when the entrance caved in. Suffocated in the dark, waiting for help that never came. We didn't go down. What was the point? The French sergeant, he walked over to the German trench and sat down on the firing step, right where a German soldier would have sat. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands, stared back across no man's land toward the French lines he'd defended for 4 years. My brother died in 1914, he said in broken English. First month of the war, somewhere out there. He gestured at the wasteland. I never found him. He smoked his cigarette down to nothing. We won, he said. His voice was flat, empty. They tell us we won. We stood there in the German trench, victors in a graveyard, and I wondered what winning meant. I wondered if anyone had won, if anyone could win something like this. We should have turned back then, should have gone back to our lines, filed our report, tried to forget. But I kept walking, past the German trench into the rear area. Some of the boys followed, most stayed behind. The landscape was destroyed as far as I could see. Towns that had been wiped off the map. Forests turned to fields of stumps. Churches reduced to rubble. Everything gray and brown and dead. I found a farmhouse, or what was left of one. Just some walls and a collapsed roof. There was a garden out front, or there had been once. Now it was just craters and mud. But in one corner somehow there was a rose bush. Alive, green leaves. One last rose, deep red, hanging on despite everything. That rose broke something in me. I sat down in the mud right there and I wept. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. For Danny. For all the boys in my company who didn't make it. For the Germans in their trench. For the French sergeant's brother lost in the mud. For that Rose, surviving in hell. Peterson found me there. Sat down next to me, didn't say anything. Then he started crying too. And Martinez and Jenkins. One by one, all of us, sitting in the ruins of a French farmhouse, crying for everything we'd lost, crying for everything we'd done. I killed men in this war. I know I did. I fired my rifle, threw my grenades, and men died. German men with families, with hopes, with lives, just like me. What did they die for? What did any of them die for? This wasteland, this graveyard, this nothing? The captain found us eventually, told us it was time to go back. We were shipping home soon, he said. Going back to America, back to parades and pretty girls and life. But I knew the truth, sitting there in that mud, looking at that impossible rose. I wasn't going home. None of us were, not really. They shipped us home in December of 1918. There were parades, just like the captain said. People cheering, bands playing. Everyone wanted to shake our hands, buy us drinks, hear our stories. I smiled. I said thank you. I told them we'd done our duty. I didn't tell them about no man's land. Didn't tell them about the bodies in the wire, the men in the craters, the Rose in the ruins. They wouldn't have understood. Couldn't have understood. You can't explain hell to people who've never been there. My ma cried when she saw me, said I looked thin. My old man clapped me on the back, said he was proud. My girl, Sarah, she'd waited for me. We got married in March of 1919. Had 3 kids. I worked at the factory, came home every night, mowed the lawn on Saturdays. On paper, I had a good life, a normal life. But I never left no man's land. Not really. I dream about it. Not every night anymore, but often enough. I'm walking through the mud again, stepping over bodies, breathing that smell. Sometimes I find Danny in my dreams, still alive, asking me why I didn't save him. Sometimes I'm caught in the wire and I can't get free, and the machine guns are firing and firing and firing. I wake up gasping, covered in sweat, and Sarah holds me until the shaking stops. She doesn't ask anymore. She learned not to ask. The thing they don't tell you about war is that it doesn't end. The shooting stops, sure. The dying stops mostly. But the war keeps going inside you, day after day, year after year. You carry it with you like a disease. I can't hear fireworks without flinching. Can't see barbed wire without feeling sick. Can't walk past a cemetery without thinking of all those boys still over there, still in the mud, still waiting for someone to bring them home. There's a whole generation of us like this, walking ghosts. We came back to America, but part of us never left France, never left the Somme or Belleau Wood or the Argonne, never left no man's land. People call us heroes. They thank us for our service. They built monuments and wrote songs and made speeches about the glory of it all. But there was no glory, just mud and corpses, and that terrible silence after the guns stopped. I'm an old man now, 76 years old. My kids are grown. My grandkids ask me about the war sometimes, and I tell them the simple version. The version they can handle. The version with flags and honor and duty. I don't tell them the truth, that we fought over nothing, killed for nothing, died for nothing, that the prize we won was a graveyard, that the peace we bought came at a price no sane person would ever pay. I don't tell them that when I close my eyes, I'm still walking through no man's land, still looking for a way home that doesn't exist. The war ended in 1918. The armistice was signed. The guns stopped firing. But in my head, they never stopped. Never. And I'll die still hearing them. Still smelling that smell, still seeing that rose blooming in the ruins, defying everything, surviving against all odds. Beautiful and terrible and utterly, utterly meaningless. We never came back. None of us did. We're all still out there, walking through the mud, looking for something we'll never find. Looking for the boys we used to be.